questions?
Yeah, I do have a request before. Oh, good, I can see you now. You blew your chance at throwing the tomatoes. I can see you now. Before you ask questions, I do have this request, and that is, by asking questions, I mean just that. Ask me question. I'm very happy to hear about your experiences. I really am, but I don't think that this is a proper venue for that. So if you want to talk to me later about your own experiences, that's fine. I'll be glad to hear them. But right now, let's please just limit the questions to short questions only that would be of interest to everybody in the group or might be able to help somebody. So who wants to go first? Okay.
There's some mics over here, guys. Please come up to the mic. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for that. You're so brave and sweet, and I want to talk to you so much more. And I have relatives in Alabama, and I lived in Alabama for a while. I wanted to ask you, because we've shared some experiences, do you have any members that worked in the military or in intelligence? There's a very high correlation in abductees with having, family members that came from that background.
That's a good question. Not in intelligence as far as I know. Okay. My first husband was in the military for 4 years. And this is one of the things I wrote about in Unlocking Alien Closets, is that during that period of time, a man who worked in a civilian role on a military base just came into my place. I was working in what back then you'd have to be a baby boomer to appreciate the term dime store, because they don't exist anymore. But I was working in what we called a dime store at that time, and a stranger approached me total stranger, approached me and offered me a much better position in a civilian role on a military base. And this was back in 1973, way before I knew about any of this stuff. And naturally I accepted it, and I always thought that was weird. And I've gotten several jobs that I did not apply for that I don't know how I got.
So you worked at this base?
Yes, I did. I worked on the base as a teacher's aide, as a civilian, but on the base.
Did you have any
Laurel Bay?
No parents? Okay.
No, Laurel Bay, South Carolina. No parents in the military.
Okay. Or NASA or aerospace industries?
An uncle, yes, but parents, no.
Okay, thank you.
But my husband, yes. My husband was first husband. Yes. 15.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Unlocking Alien Closets 20. Lost was a key 17. Yes.
Yeah, I just got a short question. Like, what do you think's the story behind that short guy with the blue suit? Think he's like a hybrid guy or something? He's just some...
I really don't know.
Yeah.
I really, sorry, don't know. I saw him with the military person, whether he was a hybrid, a hologram, whatever, I don't know for sure.
Looked like a Keynes painting or something. But if you get, well, it ever went like they threaten you and they say that, if you talk, you're gonna get what, and then they don't follow through on it, but then they tell you you're going to implant memories. Does it ever get confusing? You think you're lecturing implanted memories instead of what actually, but you got this feeling.
Oh, sure. That's one reason I bring it up in just about every lecture that I lecture, and I wrote about that too. So yeah, that's a problem. It really is. Yeah. Which is one of the reasons that at the very beginning I prefaced my lecture with, don't automatically accept everything I say. Go out and do your own research. These are issues that I want to bring up so that you have a basis on which to do your research.
Well,
so thank you.
It's fascinating.
Thanks.
Yes, have you ever gotten help from a regressive hypnotherapist, such as Bud Hopkins, Dr. John Mack, or David
Yes.
Jacobs?
That's a very good question, and some of my early memories, some of them. Well, let me put it this way. I'll try to make this fast. Okay, it's complicated, but I'll try to make it fast. The first couple of things that I talked about tonight, where I recalled being aboard the alien craft in the round room with a white light and the aliens conducting medical experiments on me, that was conscious memory. But in the early which happened in the late 70s or early 80s, that's when that happened. So let's put this in context of time, okay? That was conscious memory. However, in the early 1990s and 1991, I started having a lot of new experiences. Bits and pieces of those experiences I would remember consciously, but I couldn't remember everything. And I did undergo hypnotic regression. Bud Hopkins is a person I called. He was too busy to deal with me at that point in time, not to mention the fact that I lived in Mississippi and he lived in New York. He referred me to John Carpenter. And my file was one of the 140 sold.
So basically, your outside help has come from, is it Dr. John Carpenter?
It's just John Carpenter, yeah.
Are you still working with him?
No. No, in fact, that's a good question too. No, in fact, most of the experiences that I talked about with you tonight were not recalled under regression, but were conscious recall. You know, the experience where I saw the stitches on, the black patches on the eyes, the helicopter over the roof conducting the mind control. Those were conscious recall, not under regression. I haven't had any hypnotic regression since 1993. Everything that's happened to me since 1993 was all conscious recall.
Yeah, I remember you were here at the Pickwick Recreation Center in Burbank about 10 years ago.
1993, yeah. 1993, yeah.
And so...
yeah, a lot of, those were, and at that point in time I talked about earlier experiences, and a lot of those were recalled under hypnotic regression, but everything since then, conscious recall.
So essentially, you've been on your own with no outside support or help since then?
I haven't gone to any kind of therapist, that's correct. Not since then.
So you've had no contact with John Carpenter in the last 10 years then?
Well, no, I didn't say that. I mean, we've spoken at a lot of the same conferences.
But
I haven't had hypnotic regression since 1993.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
In your alien abduction, when you've been abducted by these aliens, do they ever take you to like underground alien bases in like the Southwest Joshua Tree, the desert part of Southern California that were full of those reptilian greys and those hooded ones? And do they take you like anywhere like out into space, off world, like to the moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, with, and do they keep you longer than 2 hours?
Okay, that's all I can handle at one time, okay? Okay. The entities, the chalky colored creatures with the big black eyes,
Yes.
they did take me to a base that was, I got the impression that it was under the ocean. And there was a base down there that had a whole bunch of different spaceships in there. I remember seeing, I call it a parking garage for spaceships. There were about 12 spaceships in the underwater base. But as far as being taken to another planet, I don't recall that ever happening. And I did talk about the military facility that was in a camouflaged hillside.
What?
Actually, I got that wrong. Actually, it was a hillside with a camouflaged facility. So yeah, that. But I don't know where it was. I don't know where that was located.
Because you were like here in the early 90s, about 10 years ago. How many have you been abducted within the past 10 years? And if so, how many times?
I have been abducted within the last 10 years, but really I don't know how many times. Quite a few times. But the exact number I don't know.
And how long did each abduction last on the average about?
Some of them short periods of time, like a couple of hours, and there have been some experiences where I've had an entire day missing.
Oh yeah, do they ever like beam into your bedroom and beam you aboard the spacecraft like that?
I have memories of that having happened. That is correct. Okay. I guess we better let somebody else do it. Thank you very much.
I'm just curious to know, when you started going back to this new church and you had more spiritual answers to what was happening to you, did the nature of your experiences change with this new feeling and this new information? Have you noticed a change in the nature of the events? Do you feel more protected now, or still really awful things happening?
That's a very good question. I feel I don't have nearly as much apprehension as I did before. I got rid of my basic fear a long time ago. I guess that's probably not the best way to put it. Probably a better way to put it is more of a peaceful feeling. As far as that is concerned.
Do you mean peaceful about aliens, and not peaceful about the military stuff?
No. Just a general kind of peace. Now, on the other hand, I have become extremely more passionate about revealing what's going on, because I feel that as human beings, our rights have been greatly violated. So I become more passionate about that. I guess it's more of an inner peace that I feel. That's probably the best way to put it. I feel more of an inner peace. I've seen protection, though, it's not just a matter of feeling a spiritual protection, but I've had evidence of human protection also. I wrote in Unlocking Alien Closets, I wrote about some guy named Jeff, whom I never met. I don't know who he is. I don't know where he lived. He said Texas, but I don't know. And this is one of the things I could never prove. It's something I could not prove, but there's plenty of evidence, as far as I'm concerned, that he and his group are helping me behind the scenes. And I've seen way too many times when I've found myself in what I consider dangerous situations, and something weird happened and got me out of it. So I do feel protected. Maybe it's a false sense of protection. I don't know, because, I try to look at every angle. But I feel protected.
But the scary things are still happening. You're just relating to
the things have, ironically, the mind control experiments and that kind of thing have greatly decreased since I became more and more open about this stuff.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
About the underwater activity you've seen, do you know where that was located? Do you know where places that you've been? Do you know do you have an idea of where in the country, where in the world?
I don't know. I got there was something that made me think that it was possibly in the Gulf of Mexico around the Gulf Breeze, Pensacola area.
You mentioned you'd been there before.
Right.
Did that happen?
During that period of, it was during that period of time. It was during the period of time when I was going down there quite a lot. And the water and everything looked consistent with that area. But as far as knowing, I don't know. That it was just the sense that I got.
Oh, it was a sense. And as far as the pictures you showed of the stun gun, where did those come from?
Those pictures of the sticky shocker. The sticky shocker is that particular one that I showed is developed by a company called J-Core, and J-Core you can actually find, or at least you could in a couple of years ago, you could find information about that thing on the internet, and my husband and I contacted J-Core and asked for their permission to put those pictures in my book.
Now, your husband helped you find that?
This is my current husband, remember, number 2,
Yes,
the one
number
who's
2.
supportive. Yes, he did.
And how did you meet number 2, and how were you able to open up to him about your experiences? Has he had experiences too?
My current husband's Mark Davenport, and he had been researching this phenomenon for 20 years when I met him, and now he's been researching it for 30-odd years, 30-something years. So he actually was more familiar with the phenomenon than I, because he had been researching this from an objective point of view rather than from an experiencer point of view.
You have children. Are they from your first marriage?
2 daughters from my first marriage.
What are their experiences? That's my last question.
Their experiences are, I'm not allowed to talk about my daughters.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Did these aliens or the military associated with them ever use you in a sexual way? Or did you ever have an unexplained miscarriage or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, I wrote about some of that stuff. I had a lot of problems. Back in the early, and this is a hard thing to talk about, but back in the early 90s, I had a lot of physical problems where I felt as if I had been abused extensively, but just had little bits and pieces of disturbing memories associated, and since that period of time, more and more memories have come back and things have been falling into place, and begin putting the pieces together, and there is a history there, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
We'll make this gentleman's question here the last question. Okay, after Barbara.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Leah, I wonder if you've ever had experiences with the ETs where they've been training you to do healing or something inspiring, or if they've really encouraged you, if you're aware that they've encouraged you in your mission to get out here and share all this information. Bring it to light.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Now, if I get off track with this, get me back on it, okay? Because this was kind of a part A and a part B, all right?
Yeah.
So get me back on it. But this is important. Yes, I have received training from some source that I cannot identify. I don't know where the training's coming from. I recall that back in the early 90s, I had an experience with an alien creature that I called the teacher. He was by himself, and I remember that we both were standing, and we were standing face to face. He was a lot taller than the other creatures that I showed on the screen. And I only remember one encounter with him. He reminded me of the creatures that were at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
Okay? And I remembered him telling me, now, you know, here are things that we need you to remember for the future, but I don't remember what those things were. So that's the only alien connection I can see there. However, there have been many, many, many times that I've had these virtual reality experiences that I mentioned before that were not those, that were of a different kind from the ones I said that I felt might be meant to scare me. I've had other virtual reality experiences that concerned earthquakes and flooding, tidal waves, tornadoes, Middle Eastern attack, way before 9/11. I was having virtual reality experiences of Middle Eastern attacks, and even Middle Eastern attacks with Middle Easterners on foot, you know, like guerrilla warfare throughout the country long before 9/11. So as devastating as that was to me, it was not surprising to me. It was almost as if I had been prepared to deal with that. And there have been these experiences like that where I have been in charge of a rationing program. Like there was a huge food shortage, and I was put in charge of doing the rationing, actually taking inventory of the perishable foods and making sure that they went out first before we tapped into the dried foods and the canned foods and that kind of thing. So yeah, I've had lots of these scenarios where I was prepared to deal with all sorts of disasters. I've had others where I actually was trained to fight and to escape guerrilla warfare attacks, all sorts of things like that. But Barbara, I don't know who or what is responsible for putting those scenarios into my life. And that's a big question I have. That's one of my biggies that remain unanswered. And I need to do a whole lot more research on that and find out the perspective from other abductees who have gone through the same sorts of things. And did I answer every part of it, or was there another part?
Just the one last part. I'm just wondering, from experiences I've had and other people I know, if you feel that some of these beings, we'll call them extraterrestrial, are really encouraging you to do exactly what you're doing.
Oh,
in other
yeah,
words,
that
to really
part.
share this information publicly.
That part, I received a silent voice message way back in 1991, right before I went public. This silent voice message said, "We will be coming in greater numbers and with greater frequency, and we need for the public to be prepared because we don't want them to be afraid. So we want you to speak and write about this subject." And they even told me that it would take a lot of strength because they said that you all have to undergo a lot of ridicule and harassment. I was told that ahead of time by some force that I could not see. So, but I don't know, again, whether it was alien or what, I don't know.
And maybe those whom we think are alien, or whom we give that label to as alien, are not alien. You know, maybe there's some really high goodness in a lot of them too. Anyway, God bless you for what you do. That's just great.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your work too. Appreciate that.
I enjoyed your talk very much. You said one
Thanks.
thing that I was hoping you could elaborate on. You said you had mentioned that on the internet you had seen pictures, and I didn't understand it, if it was entities or humans that you had said had been involved in your abductions. If you could elaborate on that.
Humans, yeah. Yeah, some of the human beings that I talked about in my earlier experiences, that in the course of my research over the past few years, I have stumbled across some photos of some of them. And it's been really hard for me to decide what to do about that information. You know, what to do with it, you know, whether to name names or whether not to name names. It's a real hard position to be in. Lots of people have tried to get me to name the names, and I hope that at some point in time that those individuals will be put out of commission. Right now, they have more resources at their disposal than I do. I don't think that it would be prudent of me right now, right here, to start rattling off names for, it has nothing to do with fear. I don't care, like I said a little while ago, we're all going to die, so that's not it. But the point is, right now, there's not anything that I, as an individual, can do about it yet. If a person really wants to know who these CHEOPs, as I call them, are, and really wants to do serious research, they are findable. Go on the internet, go to mindcontrolforum.com and other mind control websites, and do extensive research on the internet, typing in mind control and various related subjects, and the same names that keep coming up over and over and over and over again from the mouths of other mind control victims, those are the ones you want to look at.
Would you ever feel compelled to contact them directly and say, I'm aware of who you are?
They know that. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
And thank you very much, by the way,
Let's all
for
thank
your
Leah.
Thank you.
You.